This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Kevin just returned from a 7-night cruise on Carnival Venezia out of Port Canaveral. Now, this ship started out in New York, and it's seasonally in Central Florida here, so Kevin jumped on one of those cruises. Kevin, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, Doug. How are you? Good,
man. Excited to talk about Venezia here and what you thought of a Florida sailing, because we've heard a couple of reviews of the New York cruises. So before we get to the ship itself, you're in the Central Florida area. So what made you want to take this 7-nighter during spring break?
Well, the itinerary that it offered, kind of the Eastern itinerary, Eastern Caribbean itinerary, really, good one, one that you don't get to do very often out of Central Florida. We've been doing a lot of, short sailings over the years. So it's kind of nice to get a longer one to some islands that we haven't been to in a while.
So this is a little bit different. You were talking before we started recording is like, this one doesn't have the whale tail, and it kind of threw your wife off, right?
That's correct. Yeah, you definitely, looks a little bit different than all the other Carnival ships, but obviously the funnel is a little bit different, but the look of the ship looks very similar to some of the other Carnival ships.
Living in Central Florida, do you do any pre-cruise nights by the port, or is it a day of thing for you?
We sometimes do either one, right? So this time we actually did drive over because the ship didn't actually leave until Sunday. So we did drive over to Cocoa Beach area on Saturday. We got a nice little hotel right there on the beach, the courtyard. That's it's decent. Not nothing super fancy, but it's a good location, and got to walk down to the Cocoa Beach Pier that we never actually been to yet, and nothing super to write home about, I guess you could say, but it's still a fun little area to kind of hang out and enjoy the area.
So how was embarkation, and how long did it take you from the curb to the ship?
Once we got into the parking garage, parked our car and got to the terminal and through security and all that fun stuff, it really wasn't that long. I'd say under 15 minutes, really. I mean, we are platinum members with Carnival, so get to have priority check-in and so forth. And, really when we walked into the terminal, there was no line check-in. I mean, even the ladies like, I'm not going to go through the spiel. You sailed us many a time, so the routine, and so the longest line really was security, which wasn't that long, and got through security and pretty much right onto the ship from there.
What were your first impressions boarding Carnival Venezia?
So they do, you walk in on the, right there at the, the atrium, Carnival Venezia, it's basically like a Vista class ship, right? So if anyone's ever been on Carnival Vista, Horizon, Panorama, it's got that 3-story atrium area. This one in particular, though, it was definitely very elegant for sure. It doesn't have the Dreamscape, I think it's called, on the Vista, but it doesn't have that, but a lot of really elegant for the most part. You could tell, came over from obviously Costa and has that Italian flair.
Would you say it's a little more of a, classier feel than the other ones? How would you pin that?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good word to use. Okay. Definitely for sure. A little more classier. And you can see that all throughout the ship too, not just the atrium, but, the different decor and so forth, a little more classier at times.
You make your way to your stateroom. What kind of stateroom did you have for this week-long cruise?
We had a balcony stateroom kind of forward on deck 9. And so, as far as the actual stateroom is concerned, it was very standard, I guess you could say. I mean, nothing super to write home about. The showers are the glass door showers, no curtain or anything like that. But as far as the overall, setup and everything like that, just very, very standard, I guess you'd say, for a Carnival.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you find the stateroom comparable to, I know like this ship was designed for the Chinese market, but did you find it comparable to any other Carnival stateroom you've been into, like with enough plugs and everything? Yeah,
I'd say it had a decent number of plugs. I mean, even had, a couple USB plugs throughout. On one of the nightstands, it had a USB plug, and then on the desk area had a USB and USB-C plug on there, which you don't often see the USB-C ones, on some of the American ships, I guess you could say. But I'd say overall the plugs were sufficient for for our week-long sailing. The one thing I will say that we did find challenge was, like storage, right? So there wasn't a huge amount of storage for us. There was, my wife and my son and myself, obviously, 2 adults and a child. We had, we definitely utilized every space we possibly could to store things away. So that's one area they probably could do better on, with like shelving and good drawer space, things like that, especially for people that like to unpack and not necessarily live out of their suitcase.
Well, let's talk about the food on Carnival Venezia. We'll go to the top at the Lido Marketplace, because you have a couple of different options up that way. So we'll start at the buffet, though, first. What were your thoughts in there, and did it ever feel really crowded during the week?
Not too bad. So we actually did experience both breakfast, lunch, and dinner on various days up there. And, you usually could find a place to sit. We've definitely had situations on other ships where that was a lot more challenging. I think the big problem that we felt on the buffet was that there wasn't a huge amount of variety at the different, the dining times, I guess you could say. Really didn't offer too many selections, I guess, overall, compared to what we've seen on other cruise lines. And like I said, it's been a while since we've sailed on Carnival itself directly. So I guess it's kind of one of those things, I forget how it used to be, but I feel like there was better selection back in the day.
Now, outside of the buffet, you have Guy's Burger Joint and Tomadoro, which is everyone knows as Blue Iguana Cantina. Did you hit any of those up, and what did you think?
I did. I'll say so. Tried I think they called it the pizza burger or something like that. Tried actually a couple times throughout the sailing, and it was really, really good. I'll say highly recommend it for sure. And overall, though, they have all the other standard Guy's Burger offerings that one would expect, from there. So if you like any of the other ones, they'll serve it up. But yeah, so we really enjoyed that one. We also did try the what we call Blue Iguana, obviously on other ships. So they call it a Mexican Italian fusion, I guess, in some aspects. So they have on one side just, the burritos, all that fun stuff, and tacos. And then the other side, they have things like a meatball hero sandwich. And to me, it was good food. It was, good as what you would expect from Blue Iguana. And the Italian side, I tried tacos one day and the Italian meatball hero as well with it as well, just to try both sides of it. And they were good. Towards the back of the ship, right behind the buffet was a place called Chopstick. It was a quick Chinese place that they changed their menu every day, but they had basically someone served you, but it was basically like you were going to like Panda Express as an example, where they had like a couple of Chinese dishes and some rice and soups and things like that. And I'll say my wife and I tried it one day, and we weren't super impressed in general. So I guess the proportions they gave you, or the flavor and so forth, wasn't really what we would have expected. Definitely not like Mongolian Wok, which I think is on a lot of the other Carnival ships. Mm-hmm. Same in that general direction is the pizzeria. We tried them a couple of times as well, and thought the pizza was really, really good. Especially one would hope so on an Italian flavored ship, I guess you could say. But yeah, their pizza was one of our better pizza experiences, and happened to hit them, I guess, at a really good point in time where the line wasn't that bad. I think we waited for one turn, I guess you could say, of the pizzas to come out, and maybe we're in line for at most 15 minutes at most, and to grab our pizza and take it back to our room.
And then another complimentary dining option is down there on Deck 5, Lestrada, which I believe took the place of, was it Guy's Barbecue? Yeah, essentially that's like Guy's Barbecue in some aspects. So, we typically, whenever we board like that, I guess it's really, Dream Class or above, they have the, they have the barbecue on that ship. And, we try to go there on embarkation day because the lines are usually, a little bit shorter. But we had a hard time actually finding where it was or getting good directions. But we did find it eventually on one of the days. And I don't know, we actually thought the quality was okay, I guess you could say. Not super good. Definitely not at the level of Guy's Pig and Anchor for sure. But they also offer different options more than just, pulled pork and brisket, things like that. They also offered
meatballs and other things like that. So to me, the best thing that was there was the chicken. They had like this Tuscan or rustic chicken thing that they called.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the best thing overall. But I guess in my opinion, it was definitely not what I had expected for sure.
And for the main dining room, what time dining did you have? What dining room were you in, and what did you think?
Originally, it was marketed as the 6 p.m. dining, but when we got on the ship, we learned that it was actually at 5:30. But we were at the Marco Polo dining room, which is actually just off of the atrium area. So on deck 3, kind of midship or aft, I guess you could say, really, and so forth. But yeah, we had the 5:30 dining. We thought the food in general was good. Nothing super spectacular, but was kind of normal fare. We ended up eating there probably, I guess you'd say, half the nights overall, with the other half, supplementing with the buffet.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was more around like the service morning thing. What was interesting was, the first night in particular was super fast, 100%. I think we were in and out, and I'd say 45 minutes or an hour at most. And then the second night, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, which we have a 4-year-old, and he obviously you don't really want to sit there for super long, otherwise he loses interest, and it's not as enjoyable experience for us, plus our fellow passengers that are sitting around us. And so anyways, so we ended up opting for the buffet a couple nights, but overall though, it was a okay experience.
I felt like Marco Polo, that midship dining room on that one, it felt a lot, I don't know what to say, maybe like in more of an intimate dining experience, because there were a lot of walls in there, I felt, and like a lot of curved areas where it didn't just feel like a dining hall. Am I picturing that correctly?
You are. No, for sure. There's like, it's almost like different rooms in some aspects, right? Or divisions, like you said, walls, where we knew like, okay, like, where our table was, we knew we had to walk through a couple of doorways, I guess you could say. They even had like a couple statues throughout, and so. But yeah, it was a little bit more closed in versus, like I guess you could say like on the Vista class, those dining rooms are usually more open in that center dining room.
Did you get to dine in the aft dining room with that big gondola?
We did not, actually. I wanted to try and go check it out, but unfortunately, no, we never made it over there.
Gotcha. Any other dining we may have missed?
I mean, we did do room service a couple mornings. They do offer like the continental breakfast situation. They do offer that for free. They don't do hang tags. I think they used to do hang tags. I think Royal Caribbean, they still do hang tags as well. But unfortunately, Carnival does not offer the hang tags. So you do have to, wake up and call them, and then, about 30-minute wait. But I think in general, the service was usually pretty good. They said it was going to be 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes or less, and they'd show up for our food, and they're usually pretty nice.
I'm curious, with this being a spring break cruise, your little one is 4, almost 5. Did y'all use the kids club at all?
We did, actually. So a couple of days at the tail end of the cruise, we did take him over to the kids club. He did have a really good time overall. I mean, they seem to have some pretty good activities for them to do, and so forth. And I do remember, when our previous sailings that we took him on Carnival. I mean, there's one time when we took him close to the kids club, he's like, "No way, I do not want to do this whatsoever." This time he seemed okay. He walked right in, and seemed to be happy when he came out, and was having a real good time. And generally the fun thing is where the kids club was, which I think is on kind of deck 11, kind of right by the center of the ship. Mm-hmm. We walk out, and there's usually some sort of like deck party or something going on. I think it was one night we walked out, and there was the 80s dance party going on, and he loves music, loves dancing. And so he was just standing there right along the rail, dancing away. And it was more of a problem trying to get him to go back to our room so he could go to sleep, than anything else. But yeah, no, he had a good time. We had a great experience this time with the kids club.
Awesome. And how about the entertainment, as far as maybe theater shows or music around the ship?
Yeah, we went to a couple of the shows in the main theater. I think there was one that was called like Color My World or something like that we really enjoyed. We actually took our son to as well. And, it actually kind of had somewhat of a plot to it. And, we had a real good time on that one. There was another one, I think the name was like Epic Rock, that didn't really have a plot, and it wasn't as much fun, I guess, in general. But, obviously everyone has different tastes, I guess, and so forth. So, but we did a couple of shows. I guess the one problem was, I guess, with the shows is you really have to get there early to get a reasonable seat. People definitely, like I said, it was a pretty full sailing, obviously, right? But if you wanted a good seat, you had to get there really, really early when they opened the doors. Otherwise, you were probably going to be sitting, not a great seat. And there's also, because of the way the ship's designed as well, up in the upper deck, there's some poles and so forth. So you do have some obstructed view seats too. That, again, if you're late, that might be unfortunately what you get, is the obstructed view seats. But highly recommend. We were on the, like I said earlier, we really enjoyed that Color My World show, and we actually sat on the upper deck, but almost like right by the stage. So it's on the far edge of the seating area. You actually had a great view of the stage. It seems kind of odd to look at from the side, but almost felt like you could reach out and touch the people too. And even though you're on the second deck, second tier, so it was a fantastic experience. And then we also caught a couple of the comedy shows as well on the ship, and they had some really good shows there too. They do have they do most of their shows in the Limelight Lounge, which is kind of deck 4 in the middle, roughly, of the ship. And once again, as well, most of the shows you had to get there really, really early if you wanted a reasonable seat. The only exception to that, I think they had one show that was just before the Love and Marriage show. And, I was actually surprised. That was one of the few comedy shows I've ever been on Carnival that there was plenty of seats available, just because most people went to the Love and Marriage show.
How were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
The sea days were good. As far as, right by the pool area, it was a little, obviously, really crowded. The pool areas on this ship are pretty small in general. So, there isn't a lot of pool space or great seating, but there are a lot of deck chairs, both on the pool deck, which is deck 10, and then on the upper deck, I guess you say deck 11, kind of scattered throughout. They have a pool that's right in the middle. That's, kind of more like the family pool. They have the pool in the aft of the ship. That's more, I guess you could say a little more adult. I don't think it's forced to be adult, if I recall, but that's tend to be more where the adults are. They do have like DJs at both of the pools, which is, I think, a little bit different than most of the ships. And then also they have, which I don't know if it's this, I guess I don't know if it's open to everyone during the day or not, but deck 5 at the very, very back, kind of in the Trotza area, which is a little special area, I guess, on the back. I think that's open to everyone. They have a couple of hot tubs back there that you can go enjoy. But again, like I said, I'm not sure if that's actually, if we happens to sneak in, or if that's open to everyone at night and maybe just restricted during the day or something. But that was a nice little viewing area too, if you wanted to enjoy looking at the wake of the ship.
I'm trying to put this into words, but the midship pool is, I don't want to say smaller, maybe just less pool deck space, because this was designed for the Chinese market, as we mentioned earlier. So there is more shade on deck 10 and also on deck 9 where the pool is. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the pool's actually on deck 10, but it is more shaded for sure. There's a lot more wider, I guess you'd say, wider areas on either side of the ship that is shaded. There's not as much, sun-soaked areas, I guess you could say. The odd thing, I guess, I thought by the pool area is, there's the coffee shop as well. The Java Cafe is literally right by the pool as well, and so, just a little bit different, obviously. It's easy for us to go grab, coffee or milkshake or something like that there too. But it's just kind of a different spot than I think most of the other Carnival ships, which usually, I think, down on deck 5 or something like that.
All right, let's talk about the ports of call that you hit. Actually, you know what? Before we hit the ports of call, I want to ask you about the casino on this one, because you do have to walk through it like most Carnival ships to get to most places in the lower levels of the ship. So did you walk through it, and how was the smoke situation?
We did walk through it a couple of times, so it was super smoky. As soon as you were kind of in that mid elevator area, especially when you got closer to like deck 5, deck 4, you could definitely smell the smoke for sure. Mm-hmm. What was interesting though, I guess in general, you look at this ship does have a non-smoking casino just off of that one, I guess you could say. So it's like in a conference room area on the other side of the elevator bank in the middle of the ship. And it was, that one seemed to be, granted, it's a lot smaller space, but it always seemed to be much more crowded over there. But we're, kind of felt like they almost should swap the two, right? Make the bigger casino non-smoking and the smaller one smoking. But that's just me as a personal preference because, well, I don't smoke. But, yeah. It just seemed like it was more busy in the non-smoking casino.
What was your first port of call, and give us a highlight?
Yeah, first port of call was Amber Cove, Dominican Republic, also known as Port de Plata. Nice port area. We went to as an all-inclusive resort that was called Playa Bachata. Mm-hmm. And we purchased that through Carnival directly. So they pick you up there and they take you over on an open air bus over to the over to the facility. Actually, no, that one wasn't open air. I apologize. They take you over on a bus over to the resort, and you have basically all access to the facilities as far as they have a nice little pool area, open bar, like a buffet restaurant kind of thing, and obviously the beach area too. You got umbrellas, chairs, all that was included in that. And we had a really good time. I mean, they offered, actually, it's funny, they started the tour a little bit late and they said, oh, no worries, we'll make it up to you. You actually get more time at the beach, which I was like, okay, that's fantastic. So we ended up getting about, 5 hours almost at the beach before they brought us back and everything. But yeah, we had a really nice time, really great experience.
And then after Amber Cove, where did you go?
Next stop was San Juan, Puerto Rico. So they dock you there kind of just right by Old San Juan. So we actually didn't do any sort of excursion that day. We just got off the ship and kind of walked around Old San Juan. The streets are really fun to kind of walk around and see the old buildings and go in the really cool shops and so forth. So that, we just did that and really enjoyed the beautiful day there in San Juan.
And then your final port of call was it Grand Turk?
No, actually, this one is St. Thomas.
St. Thomas.
So,
nice.
And we haven't been to St. Thomas in a really long time, and so it's fantastic to get to go back. So we did an excursion also through Carnival, whereas you went to Megan's Bay, and then you also went to the tram ride up to Paradise Point, I think is what they called it. So you start out and you get a couple hours at Megan's Bay, get to enjoy swimming in the beach, the water. All that fun stuff. It was, once again, a beautiful day. Also, before they take you actually to the beach, they take you up the mountain. So you actually had a nice, panoramic view of Megan's Bay as well. So you get off the bus and take a couple pictures before they brought you down to the beach. And then after the beach, then they brought you into town and set you up to go up the funicular or tram, however you want to call it, up to the top of Paradise Point, and have a nice view of, again, the ships as well as just of the island in general. And there's a restaurant there that you can buy food at, and we got a little bit of food up there. There's a nice shop up there too that you can purchase souvenirs from. I think it's called like my uncle's workshop or something like that, and all the money goes towards like a foundation that basically helps underprivileged people that make the goods and so forth. So nice, the money goes to a nice cause, I guess you could say. So, but at the very least, you go up there and get nice views, and then you head back down, and then you basically just go right across the street from the cruise ship. So you can you make your way over there. So you kind of were at your leisure to be able to do that. So. But yeah, so we did that, had a great time. I mean, it was a fantastic day in St. Thomas, did some shopping down in the port area on the way back, and then made it back to the ship.
couple of days back to Port Canaveral. Did it ever feel like you were on a spring break cruise? With it, obviously, there's always pushback, whether you read the forums or the message boards, what have you, where it's saying, I would never take a spring break cruise. But do you feel like Carnival Venezia was spread out enough where you never felt like it was too crazy or the crowds weren't too rambunctious?
No, I didn't really feel like this was a rambunctious cruise. We've been on some really crazy spring break cruises. I vividly remember, I don't remember what ship it was, but it was a Carnival ship. My wife went on back before my son, and you had people doing hollers and stuff during dinner, in the main dining room and stuff, and it was quite crazy. But this time, it seemed like there were a lot more families than you could say like spring break college kids on it. So I don't know why. I guess that's a good question, but maybe it's just because it was a week long, getting back on a Sunday and so forth. But I think overall the ship, people could spread out, and obviously the first day is always a crazy day on any ship. That always feels like it's super busy, and then people get in the groove on the way things go. Throughout the sailing. And then at the end, obviously, it's crazy at the end too, but that's all right, but no, it felt like the ship accommodated the crowds pretty well.
You make your way back to Port Canaveral. How was your debark?
Debark was pretty good. So we waited probably till the very end, because again, we just have a short drive home. So it's not that big of a deal for us. We're not catching a flight or anything like that. We'd even, we were pretty much, actually we were in line to get off the ship. And they basically said, all right, everyone, you gotta get off, and so forth. So, we got off the ship, and, lines weren't too terribly long. I mean, it was a little bit slow going, I guess. I mean, as they kind of sorted people out, that was a little odd that as soon as you got off the ship, they were already starting to sort people out between, whether they have passports or birth certificates, before we even got our luggage. I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to do facial recognition before we even, get our luggage. But no, it's kind of, you got down, and then they then sent you into the luggage area, got your luggage, and they do have facial recognition. So that was really quick. And I'd say probably from the time we, left, I guess, the buffet, for where we had breakfast to, the time we got to our car, maybe 30 minutes at most, probably closer to 20. Really wasn't too bad. I mean, overall. So, yes, it was not a bad experience.
Did you feel that your cruise offered good value for the price you paid?
Yeah, I'd say it did. Obviously, a spring break cruise in general is going to be a little bit more expensive, no matter which cruise line you're on. But in general, I think they offered a fairly good value.
I didn't ask you, did you get the internet package on this cruise?
No internet, nothing special. So we just had the standard fare. The only thing that we got afforded to us, I guess, because of our platinum status is, we did have they do offer you like a couple perks throughout. And one of the big ones we took advantage of was they do offer like free laundry, in some aspects. So we got like 3 free bags of laundry. So that was really nice with traveling with our son that was going through like 2 or 3 outfits a day, being a messy Marvin, which you'd expect 100% out of a 4-year-old. But, that was kind of nice. So we actually pretty much went home with clean clothes, all done by Carnival for the most part. So that was pretty fun, pretty cool.
Love the free laundry. Any first time tips to offer anyone thinking of sailing Carnival Venezia?
I'd say, obviously if you've sailed other Carnival ships, there are some slight differences. So, obviously on this one, there's no roller coaster, thing like that. They do have the ropes course, but there's, and obviously no dreamscape and, things like that. But, overall, you're still going to have a really fun experience. Most of it, is the standard Carnival fare, Italian style, as they like to call it. And, that's even how it's painted on the ship at the, right at the hull of the ship. It says Carnival, Italian style, on it. And so, it's still a fun experience. So you'll have a great time.
What was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
I think for us, is making it back to like St. Thomas. My wife and I had been there in a really long time, and we had a really fun day, that day in particular. But really all of our port days we're a blast. I mean, going from the beach in Dominican Republic to just walking around San Juan and then making it back to St. Thomas. We had a really fun experience, and three ports that we haven't been to in a while. And so just getting to have the family time and show our son around some really fun places in the Caribbean.
In closing, your final thoughts of Carnival Venezia.
It's a great ship. You can tell they take good care of it. It's a little bit classier than I think some of the other ones. But it is great value. So, I mean, definitely take advantage of it, whether it's in Florida, New York, or wherever it may be sailing out in the near future.
We've been talking with Kevin about his 7-night cruise on Carnival Venezia out of Port Canaveral. Kevin, as always, great talking to you, my friend, and thanks for sharing your vacation with us.
Of course. Thanks, Doug.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
We always enjoy fielding your questions here at Cruise Radio. If you have a question to ask, comments at cruiseradio.net. We'd love to field your question. And with us today, fielding the topic of travel insurance, is president of tripinsurance.com, Dan Skilken. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Doug, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, for sure. We have 5 listener questions here and kind of a clarification type email I want to ask you as well. So we'll jump right in. Lisa from Orlando, she says, "Hi, Doug. I'm cruising to the Caribbean next month and curious, does standard trip insurance cover medical emergencies at sea, or do I need extra coverage for that?"
Well, Lisa, a comprehensive travel insurance plan that you buy on a site like tripinsurance.com cover your medical emergencies like a sickness or injury. You don't need any other special coverage. But it's a good thing that you ask, because depending on your age level here, you are not, if you're a Medicare recipient, you're not covered by Medicare when you're on board a cruise ship. And a lot of the supplemental plans out there, and a lot of people have them, have very limited coverage. They'll cover you for the equivalent of emergency room visit, but if you need further treatment, they're typically limited on their coverage as well. And they'll typically have a deductible of at least $250. A comprehensive travel insurance plan will cover you for this. But the things that you want to look for are, first of all, primary coverage. In other words, you shouldn't have to file a claim with your regular insurance company before you file the claim with the travel insurance company. If you have primary coverage, the travel insurance company covers that claim directly without you having to file the other claim. And comprehensive travel insurance plans typically have no deductible. So you don't have to worry about any of that. But I am going to encourage everybody to resist the urge to skimp on your travel insurance. So a lot of people will go on a comparison website and they say, I know I need medical coverage, and they'll look for the lowest cost plan. But you got to be careful, because some of those low cost plans have low caps on the medical coverage. And so if you're looking at, for instance, a $25,000 cap on medical coverage, Doug, the last show that I did with you, we talked about somebody that had a $43,000 medical bill from just getting the flu on board the ship. And so you really got to be careful about buying a low-cost plan that doesn't have good enough coverage. There's really no point in buying a plan that is not going to be there and cover your expenses when you need it. So I encourage people that, just for a few dollars more, you can get a plan in our better class, at least, that will provide you an adequate level of medical coverage while you're on board the ship.
Next question comes from Mike in Charleston, South Carolina. He says, we're sailing during hurricane season, and I'm worried about potential cancellations. Would trip insurance typically cover weather-related cancellations, or are there exceptions I should know about?
Well, Mike, let's talk about this from two perspectives. There's one, the special perspective of I'm going to be on a cruise ship versus I'm just going on a tour. Like I'm going down to Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico or something like that. And I'm worried about hurricanes. Most comprehensive plans have coverage for hurricanes, but you really want to check the language in the plan. Almost all the plans will cover you if a hurricane wipes out your resort or your home. And some plans offer coverage for hurricane warnings for your destination. I would consider any plan that also covered hurricane warnings to be a much better plan if you're concerned about that risk. But the language in the plans is typically written regarding a destination, if your destination is wiped out, okay? A cruise ship is not a destination. You might think it is because you're staying on board the cruise ship, but it's actually, by the insurance companies, it's considered a common carrier. And so one of the things that we recommend our clients do if they're cruising during hurricane season is to make sure to add a night of hotel at your outbound port. Because what that does is it then creates the outbound port as a destination according to your itinerary. And now you've got all that coverage for a destination now kicks in. So if a hurricane warning or a hurricane disaster hits your outbound port, you're covered for cancellation. You're saying, maybe I don't want to go. And then you're going to be covered. That's the important consideration. Now think about this. Because the cruise ship is not a destination, we get a lot of questions about people. They're on board the cruise ship. Hurricane comes up, cruise ship changes the ports and changes the itinerary of the trip while they're on the trip. And they want to know if they can get reimbursed for the days where they missed the ports. And unfortunately, there is no comprehensive travel insurance plan out there on the market that will cover you for that. Sometimes the cruise companies may provide you a credit back. But the travel insurance, because you're on vacation, unfortunately, they're not set up to insure if you have a bad vacation. This vacation sucks because I missed half my ports. Or the weather was horrible the whole time. They're typically not set up to cover that. The other thing to remember, particularly for cruises, et cetera, is that you're only covered for hurricanes that come up after you purchase the plan. So if you hear about a hurricane and then you rush to go buy travel insurance, you may not be covered. They determine when the hurricane originated by when the hurricane is named. So as soon as they put a name on the tropical storm or the hurricane, that is then considered a known risk, and the insurance company won't insure it if you buy your travel insurance after that hurricane is named. So we recommend our customers, buy your plan within that 14 days after you make your initial trip deposit for your cruise. And then you're going to be covered for any hurricanes that come up. And you'll also get a pre-existing condition waiver, and you'll be eligible for cancel for any reason, et cetera.
Susan from Tacoma, Washington asks, we just booked an Alaskan cruise and noticed that sometimes ships miss scheduled ports because of weather. If we miss a port due to weather, would travel insurance reimburse us for those missed experiences that we bought off the ship? Of course, she's talking about third-party shore excursion companies.
In that particular case, there are some plans out on the market, the U.S. Fire Gold and U.S. Fire Platinum on our site, will cover you for instance, $250 in shore excursions that have to be canceled, that you lose money on due to a change in the itinerary of the boat. And that's, to be honest, it's a fairly limited benefit. It's something. But if you think about what some of your shore excursions could cost, like in Alaska, very popular to take a helicopter, and that can cost way more than $250. A lot of times if you buy, Doug, tell me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of times if you buy the shore excursion through the boat, don't they typically provide you a credit or a refund back if they change the itinerary?
The cruise ship itself will do it, but a lot of folks these days, because there's such a high markup on cruise ship excursions, are going to companies like Viator or Shore Excursions groups where they can get it a little bit cheaper. So they're buying off the boat.
Yeah, and if they're buying it off the boat, then you do have some limited coverage, but it's pretty limited, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Jeff from Houston, we're planning a med cruise, but our schedules might change at the last minute with uncertainties at work. I've heard about cancel for any reason coverage, but how exactly does it work? And is it like it sounds, cancel for any reason?
So first of all, Jeff, if you're buying a travel insurance plan, a lot of them in the market, or US Fire, Gold, and Platinum definitely have this feature. Look for a plan that has cancel for work reasons. If you have a pre-approved vacation that gets canceled in the last minute by your boss and your boss writes a letter, then you're covered. That's a full covered reason for cancellation, and they'll cover 100% of your cancellation penalties. But the way cancel for any reason works is it's really covering you if you cancel for an uncovered reason. And a perfect example of an uncovered reason is, I don't feel like going. It's just the weather sucks, or there was a COVID outbreak, or I'm worried about Zika. Remember, there was Zika down in the Caribbean and down through Central America. Those are the sorts of things where you look at this and say, I'm worried and I just don't feel like traveling. That's covered under a cancel for any reason policy. If you live outside of the state of New York, you can, generally speaking, purchase a cancel for any reason policy, as long as you buy the policy within 14 to 15. Some of the companies have it as long as 20 days after you make your initial deposit. You can opt for the cancel for any reason coverage. US Fire Platinum includes the cancel for any reason coverage if you buy it in that period of time without any extra cost. And that will pay 75% of your cancellation penalties if you cancel for an uncovered reason. If you cancel for a covered reason like medical illness, covered medical illness, that's going to cover you for 100% of your cancellation penalties. And those kind of penalties can include, by the way, you don't have to take a credit from the airline. A lot of people say, should I insure my airline costs? And we generally say yes, because you're not required by the insurance company to take the credit. You can get paid back for that credit, 100%, get the cash back. And the cancel for any reason will cover you for 75%. There are a few times when a cancel for any reason policy is really useful. Perfect example is you book a cruise and then you independently book your flights. Now the cruise gets canceled. There are some small boats, Doug, where they don't get enough people on the boat and they just cancel it, or some special programs that they do. We've seen resort programs that were like that, or some special tours. If those get canceled, they turn around and say, well, my trip was canceled. I will want to get my money back for my airline tickets. The only way you're going to get that is if you have a cancel for any reason policy, because typically somebody canceling out on you your vacation is typically not a covered reason for any travel insurance on the market. So these are really useful plans. It's the best coverage that you possibly can get. You pay a premium for it. You're going to pay somewhere between 3 and 5% more for the travel insurance, but you know you're covered. Mm-hmm. When I travel, I always buy a cancel for any reason policy because I just don't know what's going to come down. And I want to make sure that I've got an option.
Amanda from New York, I've got a Panama Canal cruise from Miami coming up, but I'm flying in from New York the same day. If my flight gets delayed and I miss embarkation, would my trip insurance policy help cover getting me to the next port of call?
Amanda, yes. If you miss your cruise due to a covered travel delay, like any airline delay, not only will it cover the cost to get you to the boat, to the next port of call, it'll also cover the lost day of your cruise, or however many days of your cruise you lose until they can get you to the next port of call. So they'll divide up the total cost of the cruise by the number of days, and they'll pay you back for that. That's covered under trip interruption benefit. But watch the language in the plan because they often have a minimal delay. This falls under the common carrier delay, an airline delay, for instance, and they'll have a minimum delay. And most of the time, it's about 3 hours. So you don't want to get a situation where you're flying in about an hour and a half before the boat departs. And then the plane is late, and you look at this and say, wait a minute, I was counting on that coverage. And they say you didn't have the minimum delay. You were only delayed by 45 minutes and you missed the boat. So give yourself some time. Most people do, I typically, if I'm taking a vacation like that and I'm taking a cruise, I try to fly in the night before and enjoy the port and the town before the cruise starts. That way I'm not anxious about when I'm getting on the boat. But yes, you'll be covered. Just watch the language in the plan and take a look at what the minimum travel delay is in the plan.
All right. So we've unpacked a lot today, so we'll leave it there. Dan, if anyone has a question for you, where can they reach you?
Send us an email at support@tripinsurance.com. We are happy to help you. You can give us a call or send us an email. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Even if you haven't bought your travel insurance from us, we're here to help. We've helped people with their claims. We've helped people with other questions. We'd also be happy to help you with any quotes that you or any other issues that you might have regarding your travel insurance.
Been talking with Dan Skilken, president of tripinsurance.com. Dan, thank you for your time today.
Doug, it's always a pleasure.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,